Consider this a quick disclaimer of sorts for these episodes. The first 5 episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 I watched back for my original reaction channel. However, because corporations suck, those videos no longer exist. And I do want the content of my reaction and the commentary that I provided in the post-episode discussions to exist somewhere just for posterity's sake, I suppose you can say, because I really did enjoy these episodes. I really did enjoy the kind of in-depth sort of analysis that I tried to do on the characters and what was happening and all that. So yeah, I think I might have made these videos freely available on my Patreon. I can't remember, but regardless, here they are on my reaction watch-along channel for people to enjoy. If they do well enough, I may continue watching season 2 because let me be very clear about this. I did not continue watching season 2 offline past these 5 episodes. I still have not seen the rest of season 2, so please, 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 if you are going to comment, and by all means, please do so, do not say anything relevant to the rest of season 2. Do not spoil anything. I have still only seen the first 5 episodes of season 2, that kind of back to the past school days arc, so do not say anything past that in your comments. But other than that, please do remember to like the video, please comment, subscribe, check out other stuff on the channel, all those good things that you can do to promote engagement and interaction with the channel. But yeah, maybe I'll continue past this arc if these videos perform well on this channel, but otherwise just enjoy these for what they are. Hello and welcome one and all back to Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. We're here at the final episode of the Hidden Inventory arc, and I am concerned for Geto. I've been talking a lot in the Patreon discussions about what I do and don't think is going to happen here, but ultimately I'm really not sure what to expect. Speaking of the Patreon, you can of course check out that link in the description below if you want to support me further. However, I would also just appreciate it if you'd be willing to leave a like and comment on this video. I don't think I really want to hem and haw too much before getting into the episode, so let's just get started, shall we? All right, Patreon, are you ready to end this arc? Here's your countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, we're just opening with the OP. Just jumping straight in with the intro this time around. Okay. That tells me that once they start telling the story of this episode, they don't want to interrupt it. Interesting. Okay. This is probably also the last time we're going to see this opening, I would imagine. Because some people like him are dead. Because yeah, this opening is very much, you know, focused on our past characters, which we are not going to be focusing on come next arc. Well, at least not focusing on in the same way that we've been focusing on them now. I would have to assume. I wonder if they're just going to change the visuals, or if the song is going to change too. I would assume they would just go ahead and change everything, right? And then I wonder, because I think the entire, well, except the 2 recap episodes that we're getting, I think the entire rest of season 2 is a single arc. So I wonder if that whole arc is going to have 1 OP for the remainder of the season 2, or if they're going to be 2 different ones. Huh. 1 year later. Oh, okay. Huh. Oh, wow. Okay. More power spiking for Gojo, I guess. Man, I know that we've like seen him in action a little bit in season 1 in the movie, but like seeing what he accomplished this long ago really does make you wonder, like, oh my god. It really does make you wonder just what he's actually capable of in the present. Whew. Man, our boy Geto looks so tired. Have you lost weight? Oh. Man, he looked tired before, and now he's going through it. And there and he's commenting on how there's a widening gap in the power between them. Man. Oh, this is yeah, we're revisiting the way that we started this season. Okay. Man, we're really getting a lot of I feel like we're starting out this episode with a strong sense of isolation for Ghetto. Right? I feel like so the reason that I'm not talking super much is just because I feel like what we're being shown at the moment, man, that yeah, that experience is just living rent free in his head. And I mean, I can't blame him. But what I was saying, I feel like the biggest themes were being that are being shown to us right now are isolation for Ghetto, and also I think how the especially with the way that they chose to repeat the way that we opened season two. Ooh. How earnest, how simple. I feel like we're kind of being shown that, huh? I feel like we're kind of being shown that Ghetto's power in and of itself sort of is warping who he is. I feel, at least. Oh, huh. Incredible. The art has been wild this episode, by the way. Go on. That sounds impossible, no? They're more or less just born from negative emotions, aren't they? Oh. I'll say he was a very fascinating character. Yeah, but that was forced on him, wasn't it? Pretty sure those heavenly packs occur at birth, don't they? Or maybe only some of them do. I'm not fully certain on that. Ghetto? That was what my guy is struggling. Man, she was incredibly unhelpful. Oh, I didn't like that interaction. Oh, so they did manage to get his get Tengen a vessel. Huh. What happened? Did that other guy die? Man. Very interesting. It's not that he's here. It wasn't the voices of everyone that were coming through muffled and unclear. It was just the two who were telling him to kill the children. The children's voices came through just fine. Sentenced to death. Ah, and they gave the mission to Gojo because of course they did. Well, have either of y'all been talking to him? Because it seems like he's been by himself, having to deal with everything on his own for the most part. Does she know? Or is or is it on a need to know basis what he did and what happened? No, she knows. She's asking him about it. I honestly I kind of agree with her. I hmm how is this about to go down? I want to hear more explanation from him. I want to hear more. Oh, yep. I You can't do it. Even if there weren't a crowd, you can't do it, Gojo. Man, I kind of get what happened to him, but I feel like we needed more. I really do. I get that sometimes you just get worn down, and eventually you reach a breaking point, but it really just feels like the turn he took was so sharp the way it's being presented to us. I don't know. Those are the kids from the village. And those are two of his fighters in JJK Zero, I think. Man. Well, that's a cool connection, I guess. Many objected. It. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. You look just like him. Cut off. Yeah. Uh, kids had a rough childhood, I take it. Definitely not. I mean, he ain't lying. We've seen how the Zenin clan treats women. It ain't good. Strong enough to keep up with me. Gojo's got some pretty high hopes for Megumi. Ah, now we're back to the present day. Uh, just memories. uh, is there an after credit scene? Doesn't look like it. I'll wait. I'll wait for the credits to run before I talk. Feel like I might actually end up having less to say about all this than I thought I would. So now we've seen the last of the events that kind of transpired to, I guess, in a sense, push Geto towards the path that he's on. And it feels bad. I started saying earlier and then I decided to just kind of cut myself off. Um, while I can kind of understand that, like, I can kind of understand what happened to him and how it made things go this way. it feels like, what does it feel like? It feels like Geto put too much pressure and responsibility and too much of a burden on himself initially as a Jujutsu sorcerer, whereas most of the people around him just kind of did it because it was what was expected of them, because it was what they thought made sense, because of, maybe it sounds rude to say, but because of shallow or easy reasons. And it was never like that for Geto. And when it became the case that it was hard to continue making the decision to struggle and sacrifice, it kind of feels like he just gave up. And it's not necessarily something I can fault him for given what he's been through, but it does feel bad that it seems like the way we got to Geto being on this path of destruction basically is that he just couldn't do it anymore, I guess. Yeah. I'll try to elaborate on this a little bit more in the Patreon version and touch on some other things that I noticed throughout the episode and just kind of, expand on this and talk more. But I think that's going to be it for YouTube because because metrics tell me that most viewers stop watching after the episode's over. So I have been trying to more and more cut down the amount of time I spend talking at the end of the episode for YouTube versions, even though it kind of annoys me to do so. I would like to be able to talk for a few minutes, but even if it's just like a minute or two, the viewer retention just absolutely plummets. So if you want to see more, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. Even if you don't, I hope if you enjoyed the video that you leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you are not already. But regardless of any and all of those factors, thank you for watching, and until I see you in the next one, take care. Bye-bye. Okay, and for Patreon, this might be a little rambly, and if you've watched my Patreon videos, you already know that I can sometimes get a little rambly, but this might be a little more rambly than even usual, and the reason being is because I feel like this is a topic that I could talk a lot about, but I don't necessarily know how I want to talk about it, and it's such a kind of broad and vague sort of point, sort of premise. Mm, Missing the word that I'm trying to use here. That I think it's going to be easy for me to talk around what I'm trying to say without actually hitting on certain things, especially when it's just kind of me talking to myself. That's one of the benefits of people who do group reactions is it's a little easier to kind of guide each other to certain things that you're trying to say. But I will persevere. So yeah, looking at Geto from a broader perspective, from a kind of bird's eye view, from the character that we saw in season 2 episode 1 up till the character that we saw at the end of this episode 5. What we have, I think, is a character who is very caring, very compassionate, and very troubled. I have said since episodes 1 and 2, since the beginning, I have said that Geto seems like a character who thinks about things more deeply than other characters around him. I have said that Geto is a character who seems isolated by the way he views the world and the way he approaches certain things, and that these kind of things that set him apart, these differences in Geto's character, are a big part of what contributes to him being so tired and weary and in appearance. And yeah, it's just, I think that the more we saw from Geto, the better it was established that he had a hard time being a Jujutsu sorcerer and being one of the good guys. And I think that you can, and again, these are things that I've kind of commented on before. I think that there are things you can see in the things that he said and the way he's acted in previous episodes that show that it was not that he was always trying to not only be a good person at a micro level, but he was also pretty often, if not always, thinking about the big picture and thinking about how to do good in the world at a macro level. I've talked at length, especially in, I want to say it was the episode 3 thoughts and discussion, about how I feel Geto is a caring and considerate person. So if you're wondering where I'm getting that from, I guess go back to that episode and watch my thoughts there to have a better idea of where I'm coming from, if it's not something that you feel is an agreeable stance to take. But then something I talked about, this was in episode, I want to say 2, when he was talking to Gojo about being more respectful, being less cocky, being more, in a sense, professional in the way that he talks to others, whether it be his underclassmen or his seniors or whoever, trying to encourage Gojo to be someone who can basically become a bigger player, a bigger factor in the kind of machinations of the Jujutsu sorcery world, was always a goal as was always a goal for Geto, because in him and Gojo being the strongest, in those two working together, it I think it is very much the case that he believed those two could change the world for the better. And I think that that's more or less always been his goal, is that he wants to change the world for the better. So this is kind of what I was saying earlier with the way that I feel Geto is thinking about things from a broader, bigger picture perspective than most characters. Most characters, in a sense, you could say most characters are like Itadori. Itadori wanted to be Sukuna's vessel and be a Jujutsu sorcerer, basically because he wants to save people in front of him. If there is someone that would get hurt from curses that he could personally save, that he could change what happened so that that person didn't have to suffer, he would do it. And I think that's kind of how a lot of the sorcerers, even if they don't necessarily think about it in the exact same way, even if they don't verbalize it in the exact same way, I think that's how a lot of the Jujutsu sorcerers in this show, and frankly, if we want to get into real world connections, I think a lot of like quote unquote good people in the world, that's how they try. That's how they think about things. That's how they try to be good people. They think if there's someone in front of me that I could help, I want to be able to do it. And that's not wrong. I'm not saying that that's a wrong way to view the world or a wrong way to live your life or anything like that. But Ghetto's goals are loftier. Ghetto wants to Ghetto's engagement in involvement with an engagement in the Jujutsu sorcery world is a means to make everyone safe from curses, basically. And I think that's why, I don't remember her name. I could go back and look it up, but I'm not going to interrupt this train of thought. That's why the woman who he basically called a slacker, that's why her putting forth her ideas to Ghetto seemed to, in my opinion, seemed to kind of resonate with him, seemed to kind of strike at him, because she was talking about just like wiping the slate with all of these problems. What, you don't need to have sorcerers who have to deal with all these different things on an individual level if you handle the bigger, broader problems. What's a good? Can I make an analogy for this real quick? This is gonna be there's gonna be something relevant specifically to people living in the United States. If you live outside the United States and aren't overly familiar with our the way certain systemic structures exist in this country, then you might not fully follow what I'm saying here. But it's kind of like how this is not a great analogy, but I think it kind of does the job. It's kind of like how if you have a well-functioning healthcare system, then you don't need to have individuals set up GoFundMe's for medical expenses. You don't need to have individuals struggle to get benefits from their jobs. If you have a well-functioning healthcare system that just makes sure people are taken care of, then you don't need to worry about a bunch of little problems that arise in certain individual people's lives with specific differing circumstances from one another, because at a sweeping, broader, more macro level, their problems are already being maybe not entirely addressed, but at least mostly addressed, at least primarily addressed. And that's kind of what's going on here, is that Ghetto wants people to just be safe. He wants people to just be taken care of. But he's not seeing a way to do with the obstacles he keeps running into, he's not seeing a way forward where he can effectively do what he wants to do. And it's just kind of it eventually has worn on him to the point where I think what effectively happened is he kind of gave up on trying to save everyone. And so I think because he was in a place of kind of weakness and vulnerability, and because maybe this wasn't the case, but I very much got the impression that he was becoming increasingly isolated with the way that Gojo was being sent on missions and Geto was being sent out alone, and you weren't really seeing conversations and like the conversations that you were having with Geto with other characters, he just seemed so displaced from where they were in their lives. And so I think that he was also lacking a support system. And so when this woman comes along and just puts these ideas into his head, it just and then again he gets these ideas get put into his head, and then again, because he's lacking a support system, because he feels like he's alone, he doesn't have someone to like go back and forth with these thoughts that he's having on these issues with, which means that he doesn't really get someone to kind of in a way knock some sense into him. And so instead of rejecting these ideas, which I think by all accounts someone like him should have done when presented with these ideas, instead they just kind of get to rattle around in his brain and eat away at him. And eventually, when he starts to encounter more issues and obstacles on top of what he's already experienced, it's just like, well, maybe there was a point to what she was saying. Maybe this is the right way to approach things. Maybe, X, Y, Z. It's just. But ultimately, I think what happened is that because he couldn't handle the way he was going about things in his life, rather than diverge from the path of not trying to save people, which for someone like Geto, he just might not be capable of doing. He might not be able to just give up in a sense of like, it's like in episode 2 when he after he had beaten the what were they called, the Q curse user, and the Q curse user was like, I'll stop being a curse user, I'll go farm rice or something like that. Geto was like, as if a curse user could be a farmer. Because in Geto's mind, if you have the responsibility of being a Jujutsu sorcerer, you need to make use of that. You need to try to be somebody important, basically. You need to exercise the significance of your life in such a way that you affect the world around you. And in Geto's case, he wants that to be a positive, which, again, generally speaking, most people, even if they're bad guys, think that they're trying to do something positive. And to that end, I would argue that this change in Geto, he still thinks he's a good guy. He has radically, drastically changed the way that he's going about trying to make the world a better place, but I still think that that is effectively his end goal. And when you see the character in season 1 and Jujutsu Kaisen 0, you might think that he's kind of full of it, right? You might think this is the Patreon version. You might think that he's full of shit. In his belief that like he's a good guy and he's trying to do good things. But seeing where he's coming from, seeing what kind of person he was in his youth, I think it is very easy to understand that like he very much sees himself as a good person, and there's a legitimate argument to be made that he is a good person. He's just trying to do good things the wrong way. And I would stand by that. Even though I like Geto as a character, even though I would say that he's a good person, probably even now with what he's doing, I think that at his core he's probably still arguably a good person. I do definitely agree that he's going about things the wrong way. I think that if he were trying to if he were more actively trying to make normal people into Jujutsu sorcerers, I think I could get more on board with his approach. But it seems like the way that he's going about it and the way that it was described by that woman he was talking to is that he's basically killing people and waging a war on humanity in the hopes that like some of them, when put under extreme conditions, will evolve into Jujutsu sorcerers more or less, and then the ones who don't, not worth the time, not worth the effort. So yeah, it's I mentioned this was in one of my Bleach reactions, but I'll bring it up again here because I think it's appropriate. I think it's applicable. I watched when I was younger. I watched a lot of the show MASH, and that is a show about a mobile army surgical hospital. You know, doctors in times of war, who and it does a good job of you know, it's it's one of those shows that's like comedy, but also has a lot of very serious, dramatic moments. And because it's people who are trying to exist in awful circumstances and get by and live their lives as humans, and humans, like to be happy, they like to enjoy themselves, while also showing that like awful things happen in war. And one of my favorite quotes from that show, the reason I'm bringing it up, one of my favorite quotes from that show is so the doctors featured in this show, um, they, because the show would be ridiculously depressing otherwise, they are very good at what they do. They have very, high rates of survival for their patients. And one of the doctors in particular basically, like, very rarely loses someone on the operating table. In one episode where he does lose somebody, where someone does die that he's trying to treat, um, afterwards, after they're done operating and they're back to their tents and trying to decompress after going through that, what this person, someone asks him, some, I don't remember exactly what he's asked, like, how are you doing or something like that, how you holding up, something like that. And in part of his response, he says, I think I'm having an identity crisis. I know I'm Dr. Pierce, but I want to be God. And I think that that quote is very applicable to people like Geto, people that I've been talking about, who they don't just want to be able to save the people in front of them. They want to be able to save everybody. And when they can't, when you want to save everybody, every loss that happens in front of you is that much more devastating. Because if you can't save this person who's right in front of you, how are you supposed to save everybody else? And so when Geto, when he's having that experience at the village, when he's losing his underclassmen to a mission that like that they just couldn't handle, like, these losses hurt for anybody, right? They hit hard for anybody. And like, to varying degrees, whether you know the people or, based on like how empathetic you are like obviously there's different levels of severity. But when you are someone like Ghetto, when you are someone like Dr. Pierce who wants to be God, when you are someone who just cares so much that you want everybody to be happy and healthy and you don't want bad things to happen in the world, basically, these things hit really hard and they can scar you. And in this case, they can forever change you. And so again, this is all to say that like I get what happened to Ghetto. I get it. I understand how it happened. But it hurts me that it went down this way because I know that it comes from a place of absolute care and compassion. It doesn't come from a place of just wanting to murder people for the sake of it. It doesn't come from a place of being some just, maniacal cookie cutter cartoony villain. It doesn't come from a place of malice or anything like that. It genuinely comes from a place of just wanting to do your best to let other people live their lives to the best of their abilities. And so it hurts to see that Ghetto just couldn't keep it up. He couldn't keep going. He couldn't keep dealing with those failures and the pain that those experiences cause. Instead, he's choosing a different path that I think to him seems easier. I think the reason that Ghetto is going down this path is because he's acknowledged the way he was trying to do things wasn't going to work. And rather than try to make it work, he decided to go a different path that he felt he had a better chance of success with, even if it might not be as ideal. I think there might legitimately be a part of Ghetto that recognizes his new way of doing things, his new way of trying to make the world better is not as ideal as what he was doing in his youth. I think there legitimately might be a part of Ghetto that is willing to recognize that, but it doesn't matter because he's trying to do what he is able to. And if he felt after all of his experiences and setbacks that he was just not going to be capable of accomplishing what he wanted to accomplish in his previous way of doing things, then what's he left to do then choose a path of less resistance and become the kind of Ghetto that we see now. That was super long-winded. I hope that if anybody happens to watch that, they enjoy it. I feel like it would be kind of cheap at this point to try to meaningfully address like too many other things that happen in the episode, but I'll just kind of throw some other little things out there that I noticed throughout the episode that I, thought were kind of cool or interesting or good. Um, when Ghetto was talking to the woman, as they were nearing the end of their conversation and it started raining, the sound of the rain was much more. I don't know if it was overlapped or if it was just entirely replaced, but to me, it sounded much more akin to the sound of the clapping of the cultist that has been just living in Ghetto's mind on loop for so long. I didn't hear rain when that scene started, when the weather started changing in that scene. I didn't hear rain. I heard the clapping of those cultists. And I think that again, that just kind of shows how much that experience impacted Ghetto. There were a lot of different like angles and stuff that were chosen and positioning of characters throughout this episode that I think emphasized the kind of isolation I discussed Ghetto experiencing throughout the episode. And so I'm not gonna like try to pick out a bunch of different examples, but there were multiple times where Ghetto was shown, where like he was shown by himself in a scene that he was actually with another person, or where he was like separated from somebody, or where it would like instead of showing them together, it would go back and forth, flashing from one to the other. Like that was especially prominent during the confrontation between Ghetto and Gojo at the end, where like it rarely showed them in the same shot together. It was like once Gojo called out to Geto, it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It did not want to show them in the same shot with each other. And so there were numerous instances of things like that happening. Like this, even just like the scene with Geto in the shower. I think that was the first time I mentioned it in the episode. Like there are just so many instances where they where the like the camera work or the scene itself, just in some capacity the show was physically isolating Geto to just show how alone he really was and how cut off he was from everybody else in his life. Oh, I guess I should also just mention that, like, obviously I recognize that that woman is the same woman who, like, approached Toto when he was a boy, given that she does the whole, like, what kind of woman is your type thing, and I'm just not going to talk too much about that because I don't really know how to feel about that right now. I don't know if we're gonna see more of her and, like, why she interacts with certain people and how she comes to interact with certain people at what seem to be pivotal moments, because like she very much like had a significant impact on Geto here, right? I think that's fair to say that she had a very significant impact on Geto at this moment in his life. And according to Toto, even though we didn't see much of their interactions, like according to Toto, meeting this woman like changed the path of his life. Like he said that it like flipped it. I'm pretty sure. I think he said something to the effect of like meeting this one flipped my boredness on its head or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but like so yeah, that's interesting. I suppose. I don't know if we're gonna see more of that or if she's gonna remain a bit of an enigma for the time being. And then I guess for like final little character moments to mention, I thought it was really interesting that Shoko, even knowing what Geto had done, had just kind of like come to meet up with him and was just kind of like casually chilling and talking with him. And like she didn't seem to be treating him any different, really. And I don't know if it's because she just values their friendship over the actions that he's taking, or if she kind of understands that like this is still more or less the same Geto. He's going down a different path, but like he is kind of the same person. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but that was interesting to see that she treated him that way. That was interesting. I think that's probably gonna be it. I am definitely gonna be rewatching this episode. There might be some more stuff that I notice that I want to comment on after a rewatch, but if so, you can check the description for the video that I post on Patreon, because in the event that I do like remember something that I forgot to bring up during the discussion, or if on rewatch or like during editing I notice something that I'm like, "Oh my God, I didn't notice that during my first time watching because I was like saying something or whatever." I do pretty regularly like make comments like that in the description, so even if it's like a paragraph or two, like don't think that I'm just saying something stupid. If you like listening to my commentary, you'll probably be interested in reading what I have to say there. So make sure you're checking that out if that's something you're interested in, which if you've been watching this super long video, I have to assume you're at least somewhat interested in the things I have to say. But that is going to be it. Thank you for watching if you actually did so. Thank you for supporting on Patreon. And until I see you in the next one, take care. Bye-bye.